Today's video is entitled The Untold Story of the Papacy, How the Bishop of Rome Became Pope. Most people don't know that it took 400 years before anyone was officially called Pope. And it took 900 years before the word Pope was exclusively used for the Bishop of Rome. Welcome to Dr. K's channel. Today's video is entitled The Untold Story of the Papacy, How the Bishop of Rome Became Pope. Now, most people just think that immediately Peter died, the one who took over from Peter was automatically called Pope. But what most people don't know is that it took 400 years before anyone was officially called Pope. And it took 900 years, almost a millennia, before the word Pope was exclusively used for the Bishop of Rome. This topic has come up as a response to the video that I did about whether the Roman Catholic Church really is the first Christian denomination. Now, that video has actually raised a lot of controversy. It became very apparent that many people actually don't know the history of the church, how the church was from the beginning until somewhere 380 AD, and up to the Reformation. I'm sure maybe most people just know about the history of the church from the Reformation. They know very little about the Orthodox Church versus the Roman Catholic Church. That is why I've decided to do this video in response to the many comments that I've received on that video. Now, let me begin to go into history to show you that the rise of the Bishop of Rome to Papacy is a story filled with intrigue, power struggles, the shaping of religious authority. It is a very, very interesting story of church politics, which we still have today. So many Catholic faithfuls assume that Peter was the first pope and that the Catholic Church was the first and the original Christian church. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you have not subscribed to the channel already. And also, if you have questions or you don't agree with me on anything that I've said in this video, please drop a comment. What happened was that the church started with a very small and very lean structure of local churches. Of course, at the top, we had the apostles who went out establishing churches. So they provided oversight and direction of churches. The structure of the local church consisted of a group of elders, a group of men who ran church affairs. Those who were responsible for spiritual matters, doctrine, and many other aspects. Then below them, you have deacons. Deacons were actually involved in doing administrative chores of the church. So they were more involved in providing service to members, whilst the board of elders was involved in doctrine and managing the church overall. If you look at 1 Timothy chapter 3, you actually see there clear role of a bishop or of an elder. Now, what started happening is that when they started having challenges in having multiple leaders taking care of the church, Ignatius of Antioch is believed to have been the one who had proposed that instead of having a group of elders, one of the elders is promoted to be above the other elders. And this elder ended up being called a bishop, or a pastor. So you have an elder who was called pastor or bishop overseer, and then below him you had elders, and then under elders you had deacons. So from a two-tier church structure, we moved to a 3-tier church structure. When that was done, another issue actually arose long after the Apostolic Church Fathers, who included Polycarp, Ignatius of Antioch, Clement, and others had actually died. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, there were 5 bases of Christianity. You had Jerusalem, the headquarters of Christianity. Then you had Rome. Rome became very important because it was the headquarters of the world. From Rome, you had Constantinople, which was another second important capital of the world. It was actually the capital of the eastern part of the Roman Empire. Then you had Antioch. Antioch was very important, and remember that Antioch, it was also in Turkey. This is where believers were first called Christians after Paul and Barnabas had spent quite considerable time, 1 year, and people became Christians for the first time. Now, in addition to that, there was another important city, and that was Alexandria. Now, Alexandria was the second largest city in the Roman Empire after Rome. These cities, each of them had a prominent bishop of that city. Now, what became a challenge now was that from having one person called bishop being in charge of a church, being senior to other elders, the question now that started prevailing was, out of all the bishops, which bishop was more senior than the other bishops? So out of the bishop of Rome, the bishop of Jerusalem, the bishop of Antioch, the bishop of Constantinople, and the bishop of Alexandria, out of all these bishops, which bishop was more senior than the other bishops? Because originally, all bishops were on the same level. So that's where the issue became a challenge. As Dr. Strand noted in his studies, this innocent change planted the seeds for what would eventually grow into the Roman Catholic movement. Ignatius, Bishop of Antioch, was one of the first to use the term Catholic Church, meaning universal church, in one of his 8 letters to the churches as he was going to be executed. This was a crucial step in the church's evolution. Now let's look at the rise of the Bishop of Rome. By the 4th century AD, the church's struggle for hierarchy extended beyond individual congregations to major cities. A critical debate emerged over which bishop held the most authority. Damascus, who became the Bishop of Rome in 366 AD, fervently promoted the supremacy of Rome. He began asserting authority over other major bishops in the cities like Jerusalem, Constantinople, Antioch, and Alexandria. Although he didn't fully establish his dominance before his death in 384 AD, his efforts had actually set the stage for the future leaders. After Damascus, Syrosius took the helm and was the first bishop of Rome to claim he was Peter's success. Now imagine the first time that somebody claimed to be Peter's success was almost 400 years after Peter had died. But it was Leo I who became bishop in 440 AD, who first called himself Pope and the head of the universal church. The term Pope itself comes from the Latin word Papa, meaning father. It was a common term for respect for bishops in the early church. Leo I usurped this title to exclusively refer to himself as Bishop of Rome. And to this day, the Pope is still referred to as Bishop of Rome. All the bishops were actually given an honor to be called Papa or Father. In the East, they were called patriarchs. And this was not strange because this was based, even the family structure always had to somebody, a senior leader of a family who was called a patriarch. So that same structure, cultural structure, also was applied in the church. And in the church, you find that the people were older, they were called patriarchs. It was not just a spiritual term, it was a cultural term. Now, at that point in Latin, the term was called Papa. meaning father. If you use Greek, that was patriarch. So all the bishops were actually informally referred to as Pope or Papa or Patriarch in the East. So, as we've mentioned, it started innocently with one bishop trying to assert authority over all other leaders. And remember, there was already a structure there of one person being Caesar in charge of the whole Roman Empire. And eventually they split it. You had one in the East and one in the West, just for administrative purposes. And even the church also took the same structure, because we had one prominent bishop in Constantinople in the East and another bishop in Rome who was also in charge of the church in the West. So that is the way the structure was. But as we've seen, one bishop started exerting his influence to be more senior to the other bishops. So initially the term Pope was used more broadly, applied to any senior bishop. However, over time, bishops of Rome sought to assert their unique status. By the 9th century, the title of Pope was exclusively reserved for the Bishop of Rome. This exclusivity was solidified through various church councils and the growing influence of Rome within the Christian world. Now, this historical evolution raises several intriguing questions. Was Peter truly the rock upon which Jesus built his church, as some claim? In the Bible, God is often referred to as the rock. Could Jesus have meant Peter's confession rather than Peter himself? Could Jesus have meant Peter's confession that he was the Christ and that Jesus was going to build the church upon himself? And if Peter's authority was transferable, why did the Bishop of Rome become his successor rather than the bishops of Jerusalem, where Peter initially led? How did Peter become a Bishop of Rome when his responsibility was over the whole church? In the early church history, apostles like Peter and Paul were not confined to a single church. They traveled extensively to spread the gospel and appoint elders to manage local congregations. By the time Peter was dying, the church was well established with a system of managing through bishops, elders, and deacons. This collective leadership model contrasts sharply with the later centralized authority of the papacy. After the death of Peter, other apostles like James and John continued to play significant roles in leading the early Christian church. James, the half-brother of Jesus, was a prominent leader in Jerusalem. John, known for his deep theological insights, continued to guide and influence the early church until his death. This demonstrates that the early church leadership was not centered on a single individual, but rather a collective of apostles and elders who worked together to shepherd the Christian movement. So, how did the office of the Pope, as we know it today, come to be? It was a gradual and complex process involving theological, political, and social factors spanning centuries. From a simple leadership of congregations to an establishment of Rome's supremacy, the papacy history is a testament to the dynamic evolution of church authority. You see that the evolution of the papacy as we know it today did not just take over as soon as Peter died. This took quite a long time. It involved a lot of church politics. It involved cultural, social, economic factors that influenced the rise of the Bishop of Rome to the office of the papacy. I hope that you've gotten benefit from this presentation for you to have a clear understanding of how the church has evolved and what has taken place. And now, if you're enjoying this program, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you have not subscribed to the channel already. And also, if you have questions or you don't agree with me on anything that I've said in this video, please drop a comment and challenge. I hope you'll be able to challenge not from emotions, but from either historical evidence or biblical evidence. That is very important, as people who are civil can be able to engage in this debate and this intellectual exercise as we do it together. And what I've done is a response to the questions mainly from Catholic faithfuls who actually argued that the Pope was the successor of Peter after Peter had died. But it is very clear that this succession was actually more of church politics than a spiritual endeavor or spiritual succession. As we have seen, it took close to 400 years before any of the bishops of Rome claimed to be the successor of Peter. And it took almost a millennium, almost 1,000 years before the term Pope was exclusively used for the Bishop of Rome. It is also important to know that he was Pope only for the Western Church, because the Eastern Church also had its own leader who was called a patriarch. I've done a video entitled "Which Two Popes Divided Christianity Forever?" And I also leave a link towards the end of this video for you to be able to watch that video. That goes into detail of how Christianity got divided forever, and how that the church that started as a single church, as a universal church, united, using the word Catholic Church, not the Roman Catholic Church, but Catholic in the sense of a universal church, how it got divided in 1054 when Michael II, the Patriarch of the Eastern Church, and Pope Aurelius, the leader of the Western Church, actually fired each other, excommunicated each other in Constantinople when they meant to reconcile their differences. The meeting that was held to reconcile the differences between the East and the Western part of the church actually ended up splitting the church in two forever. If you're interested in that, I'll show you a link towards the end of this video. So I hope that the Catholic faithfuls, you have a clear direction of how Christianity evolved, the history of the church, and also you have a clear understanding that the apostolic succession was not something that happened in the first century or immediately Peter died, but it evolved over a long period of time. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe so that whenever I upload new videos, you will be notified. If you have any questions, you have comments, any disagreements, everything is welcome on Tell Me Dr. Ken, because on Tell Me Dr. Ken, no question or topic is off limit. I have several other videos of similar topic. I have a playlist here where you can watch all the videos about Christianity versus Catholicism, and that will be able to give you more information. But the videos that I've referred to, the video on is the Roman Catholic really the first Christian denomination? There's a link here. The video is Catholicism, Christianity, even at basic level. There's a link here. And also the other video entitled "Which Two Popes Divided Christianity Forever?" There's a video here.